everyone, welcome back to the Nature Patch. My name is Robin and I'm outside this afternoon. It's a Friday afternoon at the moment when I like to come out and get a little bit of gardening done, and I thought I would share what I'm doing today and talk a little bit about potting mixes and raising seedlings and how I personally do it. So in a previous video I shared some seeds that I was sowing for my kind of autumn/winter garden. A lot of them have come up beautifully now and some of them are ready to be potted on. I'm going to be talking about what potting mix I like to use, what kind of seeds I like to sow and raise the seedlings versus just planting the seeds out in the garden, and whether or not some plants do need to be potted up, and just share the general process of potting up seedlings. So I've got a nice cup of tea here and I'm just going to enjoy the afternoon. So I need to get working, so I will show you what I'm doing. So before I start potting up the seedlings, I'm going to chat a little bit about potting mix. It's a question that I see and get a lot about what kind of potting mix to use and what you should use when you're raising seedlings, whether you should be using a potting mix, a seed raising mix, or garden soil or compost, all of those different mediums to grow plants in. The medium that I use may not work for you for your ethics or your garden goals. It's really a personal preference, and that's just the truth. My preference is to use potting mix when I raise my seedlings, and I recently, funny enough, just watched a video from Jess from Roots and Refuge where she talked about these exact same things in her approach to raising seeds. And potting mix is something that I like to use. I go for a medium range potting mix. This one here is from Bunnings. It's just a premium potting mix. The difference between potting mix and seed raising mix, which she covers in the video as well, is that potting mix has some kind of nutrients for the plants to grow from. So they're going to survive a lot longer in this medium versus the seed raising mix, which just really has the organic matter and the components to germinate the seed. So you can really think of it as the seed raising mix has all of that fluffy, beautiful stuff for the seed to grow, and the potting mix is where a lot of the nutrients are included, and the potting mix is where a lot more nutrients in the form of fertilizers, whether that's pelletized or organic, is located in. Seed raising mix usually comprises of something like coconut peat, as well as other things such as perlite and vermiculite, which really aids to fluff up the soil and allow the really small roots to move through that material. Potting mix is a lot more dense and it's really hit and miss when you buy the bags. I have had a lot of luck with this brand here. It's not completely natural. I mean, there are some pelletized fertilizers in it. You know, it's something that isn't ideal for me, but for my budget right now, it's what I use. And I really only use it in little tiny pots, so I'm not purchasing a large quantity of it, and it does the job. Something I've also had a lot of success with is creating my own type of potting mix, where I will use some form of organic compost from Bunnings, just the really cheap bags that are basically just organic matter. Mix in some perlite or vermiculite or some sand, depending on the seed. And then I'll add some form of nutrients, either some blood and bone or an organic plant-based fertilizer as well. So those are your options. You can pretty much buy seed raising mix, which is all done for you, but you will need to pot on that plant for it to continue getting nutrients. Or you can use potting mix like I do, and sometimes I would just plant these plants straight out into wherever they're going, rather than worrying about potting them up, because they've already kind of developed that really good size and I'm happy for them to go out. I'm pretty lazy in the garden, so I like to use the most easiest option, and for me, potting mix is it. Something I have done in the past also is sieve the potting mix that I'm using, and I do this when I'm making my own potting mix or seed raising mix, just to get out a lot of the larger materials in the potting mix. Seed raising mix, you won't have to worry about this, but in a lot of bagged soils, there are going to be a lot of larger materials, and I basically just pick these out a lot of the time, or I give them a sieve if they are really smaller seeds, which comes on to the next point. And that is, do you actually need to be raising seedlings in whatever medium, or can you just plant them straight in the ground? Again, this is really personal preference. There's no real rules to gardening, and that's what I love so much about it, is that you kind of make your own rules up. If you think you want to plant it in the ground and experiment and see how it goes, go for it. For me personally, I will either have two reasons for whether I plant it in the ground or put it in a pot. The first one being the size of the seed, and if I want to worry about, using up a lot of potting mix. For things like pumpkins, zucchinis, cucumbers, watermelon, they all have a pretty large seed and they produce a large plant from that one seed. And the larger the plant, the larger the pot you're going to need, and the more potting mix you're also going to need. So I tend to not really worry about them too much. And all of those larger ones I will just plant out in the ground. That also goes for the plants that are a little bit more hardy, and I tend to have better germination rates with some of those larger seeds, as well as some things like tomatoes, super easy to germinate, so sometimes I will just put them in the ground as well. The other reason, which I think there's probably 3 reasons now. The other reason is sometimes I actually want to know where the plant is going. Sometimes I forget to label things. I'm sure every gardener is guilty of that. But if I have a particular plant that either the seeds were really expensive or I really want a good harvest from it, I will raise it from seed and then plant it out when I'm ready, so I know I can nurture that plant and know where it is, rather than running the risk of getting a really big rain event and that seed kind of washing away if I just plant it out in the garden. So that was a lot, I know. Thank you for still listening if you are. Give the video a like if you are as well, because that really helps me out to know what videos you would like to see, and hopefully all of this information is helpful to at least one person, so let me know if it is. So I'm gonna get on to potting up some of these seedlings and show you one of the cutest little seedlings that I have here. I shared an image of these little baby basil seedlings on my Instagram the other day, and look how cute they are. They're honestly so cute, and they're just so perfect and dainty, and I'm so excited to have more basil in the garden. So cute. So this table definitely isn't an ideal height, but I have to make do. So I'll talk about what of the plants I'm actually going to be potting up and why I'm not potting up all of these plants. So the plants that I am going to be potting up first are generally the ones that I sow in bulk in the same pot. So for some different plants, mainly things like kale, lettuce, tomatoes, capsicums, that I generally do pot up a lot, I will sow them just in one pot, and I'll sow them fairly thickly. So I've done this with a few different types of the kale that I have and the collards here. And these are the first ones that I'm going to be potting up. Because I don't want these to get super big, I'm just going to be putting them in smaller pots, and I'm going to be using tube stock for this, just to give them a little bit of extra room, but not so much that they get like massive. I want to be able to plant these out pretty soon, probably in the next few weeks, but they're getting a little bit crowded in this little pot right now. The way I do this is I just pull up really gently an individual plant. And the good thing about this is that you don't actually have to pot up all of these at once. You can just do a certain area of the pot and then let the others grow up more as well to give them more space. I will just gently pull up a little bit of the area and really gently, using the top part of the plant, pull them apart to separate all of the roots. This goes for a lot of plants that you're separating from each other. You don't want to be pulling it too much from the bottom or where the soil is connected, but on top where the leaves are, because that'll put the less stress onto the roots and be able to maintain as much roots as possible, because that's kind of one of the most important parts of this plant right now. Its little cotyledon leaves are, you know, not that big, but it's putting a lot of its energy into its roots, so that's kind of what we want to maintain. So then once I've got enough, I'll just pat down the rest that I don't want to propagate right now, save them for later, and they will continue to grow in this pot. Then I'll just fill up the tube stock pot with some potting mix, make a little hole. And with kale, a lot of the time, if you plant it a little bit deeper, up to about here, and provide an overall stronger plant, which is a lot of the times why we pot up seedlings as well. So that just goes into there, and all done. So you can see in here there is a little bit of some rough material. So sticks like kind of this one here, when you're raising seeds, probably aren't ideal, but for potting up, just like I did just now, it's not a big worry, and you can simply just remove them out. But this brand here is a pretty good mix. Something that I will add in here that I just remembered after I was recording, but I'm going to add it in now to this part of the video, is that with the pots that I use all pots that have been recycled. I don't usually ever buy new pots at all. Some of these come from Facebook Marketplace, or I've just been given plants that I will then use the pot again. I don't ever really sterilize the pots. I like to keep it kind of fairly neutral and just give them a good wash out with some water. Sometimes it'll just be a really quick rinse. Again, totally up to you what you want to do for that, but I tend to want a little bit of life in the soil and the medium that I'm using for these plants, just because I think there's just something kind of wrong about really sterilizing something and then planting life into it. I want to encourage as much life as well, so I don't typically sterilize the pots, but yeah, do give them a bit of a rinse out. Alright, so before I continue potting on all of those, the ones that I'm not going to be potting up, some of these include the zinnias that I planted, these ones here. I planted a few of the seeds in each of the kind of little trays here. And zinnias, I find they're really hardy, so they don't really need a lot of nurturing and care like some of the greens do that I really want to care for them because I want a good harvest from them. But the zinnias, I find that I've always had success either just sowing the seeds directly or raising these. The reason why I raise these ones is because I want to know where I'm planting these. Same with the, oh, there's a wasp around. I hate wasps. Thank you. Same with the cosmos flowers. Again, really hardy plant, so I won't be potting these up. I'm just going to put these straight in the ground. What else have we got here? Something I did pick up the other day was some leeks. I am sowing some leeks as well. Didn't really have the best germination on some of them. Some are still popping up, but you know, these are just like, I don't know, $3 from my local nursery. They're looking really good. They do need to be put in the ground. Or for these, I'm actually going to experiment putting some of these directly in the ground, and others I'm going to pot up in clumps to make them a little bit bigger before I plant. So I might include that in a separate vlog that I'll film over the weekend. But I think that's kind of it with potting mixes and chatting all about that. Let me know if you do have any questions related to potting mix or seed raising mix. Again, totally personal preference. I find there are some great brands out there that you can pay a lot of money for, which are top notch. I pay for what I can afford. That is pretty organic, apart from some fertilizers in there. But again, I don't like to buy this all the time. I do like to make my own. So, you know, it's all about balance, and the main thing is that you're growing your own fresh food. Don't worry about getting the right brand or the cost. Just get something in the ground and experiment, see how it grows, experiment with different fertilizers. With this potting mix here, I haven't fertilized any of them and they've done amazing. With seed raising mix, sometimes I will give it a bit of a fertilizer with some watered down worm pea. That seems to really help out the plants, but these are all pretty good, so I'm really happy with how these are going. Right, I'm going to finish my cup of tea, enjoy the afternoon, probably put some YouTube on. I have been quite addicted lately to Roots and Refuge, so I have a few of her videos to catch up on. I've also been loving Erica's Little Welsh Garden, so those are two channels that you should definitely check out if you haven't already. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are in the world. Don't forget to please like this video and subscribe for lots more gardening videos. Thanks so much for watching, and until my next video, happy gardening everyone. Bye. Actually wait, I have one more thing to show you. I don't know if you can see it alright. This caterpillar here has been raising these red spikes around me every time I come near it, and I'm really scared to hold this, but I just wanted to share how beautiful it is. Let me know if you know what kind of butterfly or moth this turns into. It's amazing, and I'm going to keep it far away from my face in case it squirts something at me. Hope you enjoyed that amazing little creature.